Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, North Carolina people's in the Walnut Creek Country Club in Goldsboro, North Carolina. We're here to meet and talk with an individual who is a native son, a product of the university, and an internationally known figure in public radio, Carl Kasell. We'll visit with him in just a few seconds.
Funding for North Carolina People is made possible in part by
What can a train teach us about managing wealth? Everything must be properly connected. At Wachovia Wealth Management, we learn from the world around us. Together, we can explore uncommon possibilities. Wachovia Wealth Management.
and by contributions from UNC TV viewers like you.
Carl, there are thousands of people who wake up every morning with you in Morning Edition.
Millions, I hope.
I mean here.
Oh, here, okay.
How early in the morning do you get up to do that program?
Well, Dr. Friday, I get up about 5 minutes after 1 o'clock. And people ask me, well, why don't you get up at 5? Well, I like to sleep late. So 5 after 1, and I'm usually on the road by 2 o'clock to get to work, and then the day begins. The first newscast, of course, is at 5 o'clock in Morning Edition. But it takes time. I have to make coffee, of course, and visit the host of Morning Edition, Bob Edwards, and we have a few moments. We chat about maybe college basketball and how his school, Louisville, is doing against my Tar Heels of UNC. And then I go back to the computer and start going over what is happening. By then I've been listening to the radio coming in, and I may check CNN also early to see what their top stories are. So I have an idea of what the news is that morning, and then start writing and get prepared for that 5 o'clock newscast.
Well, now, before I came down here, someone was rummaging around in the papers over in Walnut Grove School. And this letter came to me the other day, and I think it's your first attempt at being a good reporter. And I want to read it to you.
Okay.
Dear Mrs. Daniels, thank you for the potatoes you sent us. We had garden peas, potatoes, and lettuce sandwiches, and we enjoyed eating it. We have a big turtle and a little turtle. And we have 3 tadpoles, and all of them have legs. Your friend, Carl Kasell. You remember Mrs. Daniels?
Yes.
Good. Well, here's your first letter.
What year was that?
1942, May 14th.
Oh.
So that was your first
My first attempt.
First effort at reporting the scene, as you see. Potatoes, green peas, tadpoles, and frogs, the whole works. Pretty good job.
Thank you.
Well, I also noticed in reading about you, Carl, that you mentioned that you studied drama under Andy Griffith when he was down here in the high school. And I was talking to Andy today, so I told him I was going to see you. And he said, tell you hello, give you his warmest greetings. And
wonderful.
What was he like as a teacher?
Well, he was, actually, he wasn't my teacher. Clifton Britton ran the drama department here at Goldsboro High School, so he was really the person who instructed me and was my mentor, if you want to say, and the guy who really got me on the road to what I'm doing today. Andy Griffith was teaching at Goldsboro High, and he was the choir director, and he also, yes, we did some work together because I was vice president of the Student Association one year, and he was head of the student advisor to the committee that brought programs to the high school, and I was also the student chairman as vice president. So we worked together quite a bit. And oh yes, I knew him. As a matter of fact, I think we all who knew him back then have Andy Griffith stories, and certainly I have mine. One that I can remember very well was in my senior year. We did a play called what was it? Anyhow, I was in the show. I can't remember at the moment. And he came to me after the play and says, and tried to talk me into going to acting. He and his wife Barbara at that time did their best to talk me into acting. You're good on radio, Carl, but you should go into acting. But I thought I'd stay in radio and be a radio person.
When did you know that radio was to be your life?
When I was about that big.
Is that when you were playing Grandmama's Victrola?
Exactly. My grandmother had a wind-up Victrola, and she had about 2 records, and I played those things over and over again. I was a DJ, and it's one of those types where you had to change the needle after every play, or
I remember.
It would wear out. So I did that a lot, and when I remember in the first grade, I was on the air for the first time. I think it was the first grade at Walnut Street School, Miss Kernigge's class. And we did a Christmas program on WGBR, and I sang a song. I remember that. Don't ask me what I sang, but I sang a song. And I launched my radio career then.
You stayed with the local station till you came to Chapel Hill?
I did. I got my job when I was 16, believe it or not. The local station, WGBR, had a weekly, it gave us time to do a weekly program of high school news. And so I auditioned, and my voice was changing at the time. And I got to read the news several times. And so that summer, my guy turned out to be a good friend of mine, Vassie Balcom, who was the station manager, gave me a part-time job. And it kind of built and escalated from then.
When you were at the university, you were there in what I call sometimes the golden age in radio. You and Charles Kuralt were there together, Ty Boyd, who later was on the Arthur Godfrey program.
Yeah.
You really had a lot of fun.
We had a ball. I think I spent more time in Swain Hall, where the radio TV department was located, than I did in class. It was a lot of fun. They taught radio production back then, and the kids were able to write their own scripts, radio plays, and produce them and as class projects. And they called on me and Charlie Kuralt a lot to help them out. And one year we did a series of programs about American history called American Adventure. You may remember John Ely, who taught writing, wrote the scripts. And they were sent out to, back then, educational radio stations around the country to be used. And one summer, NBC Radio ran that series, and we felt so good about it.
Well, you should.
And it was a very fine series, too.
But you were on live with WCHL, and now I want our audience here at the club to understand that you all invented stereo radio. What did you do?
In North Carolina. One, I guess in the spring, it must have been 1955. Well, stereo was beginning to come into being then. It wasn't a broadcast instrument at the time. It hadn't been developed so that they could broadcast stereo, but you had the records. So we thought, why don't we do a stereo broadcast? Now we have WUNC, the campus station, and we have WCHL, the commercial station out on the highway. Let's get together and broadcast the North Carolina Symphony doing a concert one afternoon, so in Memorial Hall. So we went in there, got permission to do it, and hung 2 microphones above the orchestra, one from WCHL and one from WUNC. And we told the audience to get FM radio and an AM radio and place them at the different locations and sit between the two, and you'll get the stereo effect. It worked. It was beautiful. And I was doing the announcing for it, and I was up in the booth off stage, and I had 2 microphones here and here. This is WUNC. This is WCHL. And it worked.
Did you ever get them mixed up?
I probably did, but who cares? We were experimenting. We had fun, and we did it.
Well, that was an enormous invention you made. You should have patented the process. Let's go back now to you and NPR.
Right.
You're down there, you got up at 1 o'clock in the morning. Mm-hmm. You're one of those people who writes their own copy.
Right.
How did you put that together? Where did you turn for source material?
We have basically the written copy that we do comes from our sources could be newspapers. Mm-hmm. It could be, basically it's the Associated Press and Reuters.
That's a German.
That's a British
now.
organization. UPI, we used to have that, but UPI really doesn't exist too much today. So what they did feed, we dropped it because it wasn't helping us. But AP and Reuters. So we get much of our stuff from them.
Well, National Public Radio has an affiliation, a network with hundreds of stations all over the United States. Do they feed you material from time to time?
Oh, yes. Some stations don't have that capability, but most of them do. So if a story is breaking in a particular area, we can call that station and ask them to file a report for us. Many times we have our own reporter stationed nearby, and we can get them to do it. Like here in North Carolina, Adam Hochberg does a lot for us in the state here. Of course, WUNC does too, and WFAE in Charlotte, and so on.
Well, like you, Adam grew up at UNC
I know, yes.
radio.
We turned them out, didn't we?
You certainly did. Well, now you're sitting there and you're reading me the news in the morning.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a time when you felt a frog start to come up in your throat? Or you
A lot. A lot.
How'd you smother it?
You can't. You really can't. The frog is okay. You can hit a button, a cough button that kills your mic and clear your throat. But if you develop a tickle in your throat, and when I develop a tickle with 45 seconds to go in my copy, it seems like a year because it gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And you finally say, "This is Carl Kasell, NPR News." And when that's over, usually the director will say, "Are you okay?" Of course I'm okay.
How about a sneeze? You ever do that?
And I've never sneezed, and never hiccup either.
You're an amazing self-control. Global news, local news, like let's take today. The lead story this morning, the disaster in the subway in Moscow.
Right.
You political strategy in this state, here's one of the Democratic nominees siding with another. How do you decide which story you're going to read first?
I would go with the explosion in Moscow.
Why?
I don't know. I just would. I can't tell you why. It's just it's a feeling I have. I would go with that. It's an immediate story. It just happened. There was a lot of deaths there. A big calamity. The political story is kind of ongoing. It started several months ago, and it's kind of ongoing. And some of the things you anticipate are going to happen, and then it did happen. And you can relegate that to second. But this one you go with.
Does the audience response from time to time say, look, you're saturating us with these Democratic candidates running all over the country, talking all these meetings day and night, ease up? And they don't say it that way, but do you ever get that feeling or feedback?
No, not this year, no.
So it's still a volatile, marketable kind of thing.
Exactly, sure.
How large is your team of your own reporters?
Okay, we have, in our newscast unit, let's put it this way, the people I work with in the morning, we have Dave Mattingly, who's our producer. He more or less is like the foreman. He runs the shop. He makes the phone calls. He takes the phone calls in from reporters. He decides what sound, in other words, what reporters, the tape we'll use within the newscast itself. He assigns that to us. We can ask him to change from time to time if we feel we want to, and he'll do it for us. But Dave kind of runs the shop. And another thing he does, he makes decisions like, for example, Reuters will report that in some incident, say 12 people died in a terrorist attack. AP is reporting that 14 died. Dave, which will we go with? He'll say go with 12. Always the low number. The theory is you can report a deaths later on rather than take them away. So we always go with the low figure. But he makes those decisions. We have an editor who checks our copy for facts and also grammar, and does it make sense? Sometimes it doesn't. We have, and that's Peter McLeod. We have Trina Williams, who edits the reports as they come in to clean them up, tighten them up a little bit, and maybe make them shorter. And she takes care of the sound. And she does some writing too. And of course I have my colleague Gene Cochran, who does the news at the bottom of the hour.
How do you keep up, though, so that you come out even at the end of the half hour and the hour. I mean, you chop that up so I don't see how in the world you can.
Well, as I always say, when time runs out, I stop talking. Like,
But I've noticed that you'll have a story that'll run for 2 minutes and a half, and one will run for 5. Somebody's got to be keeping up with all of this.
the director does. Those things are timed out before you go in. Now, when you talk about 3-minute pieces or 5-minute pieces, you find that within Morning Edition. They run the longer ones. So those things are worked out before they go into the studio, and the director works with Bob to be sure that they come out on time. In the newscast unit, we're kind of on our own. But after doing this for so many years, I find no problem with it.
You run by instinct most of the time.
Yeah, more or less.
What about Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me? How'd that originate? That's a lot of fun for you, isn't it?
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It began several years ago when the stations wanted some weekend programs, which NPR wasn't producing, some that would grab an audience. So Wait, Wait went through several different phases where they tried one thing, then the other, and it didn't work. And one time I was in Boston, this was about 6-7 years ago, I guess, at a program directors meeting. And we had one session where a lot of the NPR personalities were there, and I was to introduce them at this session. And I cracked a few jokes that night, and later on, the woman who was head of the cultural division, she came up to me, she said, "You're funny, we might be able to use you." So she did, and so I got in on the ground floor that way, and the people who headed news and information had no problem with that. That was great, working with the cultural unit too. And we started Wait, Wait, when it was about 6 years ago.
Yeah.
6 years ago. And it got off to a rocky start. We had one host, and poor guy didn't really quite fit. Nice guy, but he had other ventures which he went back to and was great at those. Peter Sagal, who was one of the panelists, they tried him out as the host, and he worked fine, and Peter's been doing it ever since. And I've been there as a judge and scorekeeper, and
Yeah, you run
that
the
sort
show.
of thing, and I have fun.
Fascinating.
Yeah. We do the program on Friday morning normally in studio. When I say in studio, I'm in the studio in Washington, Peter's in Chicago. We may have Sue Ellicott in London, with Charlie Pierce in Boston, but it sounds like we're all together.
Just a bunch of neighbors around the
A
block.
bunch of neighbors, right, yeah. And then a special guest.
Modern technology.
It's wonderful.
From where you started with Morning Edition to now, it's been a fabulous change
Absolutely.
in the way you do it, isn't it?
Well, when we began with Morning Edition, the programs were sent out by landline, telephone line to the stations. And we were the first radio network to start using satellite. And it was so clear at the beginning to try to tell people that we are interviewing somebody across the globe by satellite. They didn't believe it. You sound like you're together. And so they began to add a little noise to the thing to fool the people to say, well, you know, this is really, we're doing it.
Yeah, not a canned job.
That's right, it's not a canned job.
How do you work? How do you compensate for differences in time on these global things? I don't, you know, it's midnight in London when
Sure.
you're doing these kind of things.
Our reporters have to be ready anytime, and they know that they know when we're on the air, and they know what we need, when we need it, and they're the ones who compensate. And my hat's off to all of them because they've done a magnificent job.
So this morning, if you had wanted a feed from Moscow about that terrorist attack, could you have summoned your reporter by
Absolutely.
previous arrangement?
I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did.
And that's a ready alert kind of system.
We have, well, with telephone service the way it is today, you just pick up the phone and dial, and you got them on the line within just a few minutes or less.
How much in the studio interviewing goes on at NPR? You meet interesting people. You meet a lot of major people who are players in the decision process in our country.
Quite a few interviews a day every day. When Morning Edition finishes at 7, there's a little break, and then they have a meeting at 8 o'clock to talk about the next day's program. And Bob Edwards will probably do 2 or 3 interviews before he leaves around noon for the next day or maybe next week. ATC comes in, then they take over the studio and they start preparing for that day too with their, they'll prepare their interviews. Some are prepared so far in advance when they see something coming, or it's an evergreen that they can use any time. But the immediate stuff is done, about that day. And Bob, when he comes in the morning, sometimes between, say, 3 and 5, when they go on the air, he's doing some then from overseas. And as the program goes along, updates, they'll do that too.
Have you had the experience when you're actually in the middle of your own telecast and they'll cut in with some breaking news from somewhere in the world? How do you handle that?
We don't do that. We have a computer terminal right there
Yes.
in the studio with us, and it's always on, and it's always logged into the urgent stories that are happening. And our director, she has the same thing, he or she, and they will alert me to a bulletin just came in. You may want to use it. And if it happens, then I will use it. Now, when we had the 9/11 situation, I went on the air at 10 o'clock, no, 9 o'clock, at 10 o'clock after the first tower was hit, just a few minutes later. And was it 9? Maybe it was 9 o'clock. And I had that story about a plane that's hit one of the towers, and I had very little information about that. But before I went off the air, within that 5 minutes, the second plane had hit, and I was able to get that bulletin on. That's fast.
That's what your fans
That's
want.
what we do, sure.
What kind of reaction do you get from the audience all over the United States? You get a lot of fan mail?
Not that much. I get criticism with its due.
Welcome.
email, you know.
Yeah.
Carl, you mispronounced the name of that town.
Yeah.
Or Carl, your subject didn't agree with the verb, that sort of thing, or the object and so forth. So I get that sort of stuff.
Not like television where somebody writes you a note and says, "Mister, haven't you got but one necktie?" This kind of stuff.
But I find satisfaction in going out and visiting stations and,
Yeah.
and really meeting the audience face to face, and they like what we do.
How do you go about recruiting talent for the network?
I'm not involved in that too much. I know that there was a time when it wasn't all that difficult to get a job at NPR because it was just a fledgling organization, say 25 years ago. You could almost walk in off the street. Today, it's very difficult. It's a long process. So many people have to approve, and the person doing the hiring has to justify hiring you over other candidates who may be just as well qualified for that job. And we do have a nice intern program where these college kids come in from everywhere.
Is that for a summer or for a whole year?
No, it's usually for a summer. And they generally are journalism students. And on occasion, we've kept them. We have kept 1 or 2.
All right, now you've been doing this and getting up at 1 o'clock. When do you sleep? 1 in the afternoon?
They say, sleep is a waste of time, they say, or it's highly overrated. But no, I remember I began this shift almost 25 years ago when Morning Edition went on. And I wanted to spend the evenings with my wife and my son, so sure. I did this. I broke it up. I'd go home and take a nap in the afternoon, spend some time with them in the evening, go to bed about 9:30, take another nap, then get up and go to work. And I do that today.
Does this afford you time for real family life then? You worked it out so that you can be with your good lady. Well, that's wonderful. Now, what's ahead for you? What are you looking to do the next 5 years?
The same thing I'm doing now.
Good.
Absolutely. I enjoy it so much. I've had people ask me a lot, are you thinking about retirement? When are you going to retire? I said, well, let's see, now Dan Rather's in his 70s, Larry King's in his 70s. Who else? Willard Scott's there too. There are several people. Look at Mike Wallace in his 80s, Dan Shore in his 80s. I'm just a kid compared to them, so I'm gonna keep it up for a while.
We're going to look to you for inspiration.
I look to them for inspiration.
Hang on.
Really. But I met several years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, I guess it was, at an event in Boston with the car guys. They did a thing, and the Smothers brothers were there, and I talked to Dickie Smothers, and I said, you guys are still working? He said, yeah. I said, I thought you'd retired a long time ago. He said, retire? He said, people retire from work. He says, I don't consider what we do work. So there's nothing to retire from. And that's the way I feel about my job.
Carl, it's such a delight to sit here and talk with you here in front of all of our friends here in the Walden Creek Country Club in your hometown. But as you once said, the old clock on the wall will move on, and it's time for me to say thank you, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, who visited with this great figure in National Public Radio who's back home. Until next week, good night.
Funding for North Carolina People is made possible in part by
What can a vineyard teach us about managing wealth? Behind the art is a great deal of science. At Wachovia Wealth Management, we learn from the world around us. Together, we can explore uncommon possibilities. Wachovia Wealth Management.
and by contributions from UNC TV viewers like you.